Hello everyone, in today's lesson we're going to be looking at the modifiers. So let's go to splines and let's pick the circle. Now by holding the control key, and then once I'm done with doing my circle, I'll just right click and let's go inside this viewport by hitting Alt plus W. You can also see that this line is breaking a little bit, so let's go to the modifier list, and inside the interpolation tab we can increase this to 100. Now I want to turn this circle into a surface, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to convert to editable poly. Now I'm going to pick the face from this surface, hit the 4 key, select this face, and right click and extrude. I'm going to extrude it by 50 centimeters, and let's check this. Now what I'm going to do is just a small piece of furniture. Now I'm going to delete this face like so. And I'm going to select the border. So I'm going to hit the 3 key. And first of all, I want also to cap the bottom of this geometry here. So I'm going to right click and cap. Now again, let's go to our border here. And I'll hit the R key just to activate my scaling. And by holding Shift, I can extrude this like so. Okay, now again, with our W, I can activate my gizmo. So I'm just playing with my R and my W keys while holding the Shift. Doesn't have to have any particular shape, but I'm just making it smaller each time. Something like this. Now, all of these lines are actually way too much, so I'm going to hit the F4 to get rid of them for now. And I'll be capping this top part too. So right click and cap. Now I'm going to deselect all of these. So if you have the face or the border on, just deselect them so that you can unselect everything. Now let's talk about the modifiers. Modifiers can be accessed from this list at the top. So we have lots of modifiers that we can use. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the most common ones and the most useful ones. So first of all, I'm going to start with a TurboSmooth modifier. And what does this do? Basically going to smooth my whole geometry out. So I'm going to just hit TurboSmooth, and you can see that it has actually smoothened everything up. But I kind of lost my initial geometry. So if I go back to the editable poly, and you can see that these modifiers can be stacked on top of my editable poly. They're basically acting just like a layer that's just affecting this poly. So you might know what I'm talking about if you use Photoshop, for instance. But if you don't, then it's okay anyways. So I can keep stacking multiple modifiers, and let's just create another one. I'll show you what this one does too later. But you can see that it's starting to stack, and if I want to go back to my original geometry, I'll just click here. But for now, let's just delete this shell modifier, and let's just keep the TurboSmooth. And if I go back to my editable poly, this is my original shape, and this is the TurboSmooth. So it's actually destroying my geometry. In order to avoid that to happen, I have to create some extra curves or some kind of fixators that will fix these edges right here. To do that, there's multiple ways actually, and the most common way is by going into my element here, and I'm going to add some more curves by going into X, and we can search for actions right away by pressing this key. So I'm going to type in Swift Loop. So the Swift Loop will let me start adding some more lines to this mesh. So let's start here from the base. So I don't want the base to collapse when I use this modifier. So I'll just create this protector here, now here, and here, because basically the TurboSmooth will act on the edges. So I have to put some more curves to this mesh just in the edges, like so. Okay, make sure that you're just protecting these edges in both sides. All right, so we have another edge here, so I'm adding one here and one here too. Again, and these sides too. Also here, and let's stop there for now. Once I'm done, I'm going to right click as always, and I'm going to go back to my TurboSmooth. Now you can see how this is acting, and I'm just going to deselect it for you to see it. Now it has smoothened my whole geometry nicely because I've added these protections here in the edges. But I didn't add any protections up here, so that's why it's also kind of like destroying my geometry up here. So let's go back to editable poly, make sure that the whole mesh is selected. Let's press the X key again, and let's just look for Swift loop. And let's just finish up by protecting this top part like this. I should also mention that the distance between this edge and wherever I'm creating this new line here, it's going to also be affected. So all of this geometry or all of this edge is going to be smoothing out from here to here. So let's just see that. This is my original edge and it's going to be smoothing up a little bit further down according to where I'm putting my new protections here. And one at the top. So let's add the TurboSmooth, and there we go. Now I can keep adding some smoothing levels by just creating more iterations, but we have to be careful with the number of iterations because it's going to create lots of meshes, lots of polygons in this mesh, I mean. So if I add another one and another one, let's see our poly count, it's at 2 million now. So that's too much for this furniture. Let's go back to 500,000. It's still way up there, so I'm just gonna leave it at 1 for the moment. If you're working in a powerful PC, you can play around with the iterations a little bit more. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Now let's create another piece of geometry, and I'm going to use another method. So this time I'm just going to use a box. I'm going to hit the Control key, and I'm going to turn this into an editable poly. So right click, convert to editable poly. So I'm going to select the top face by pressing the 4 key and then delete this. Now I'm hitting the 3 key to pick the border, and now the R to activate my scaling. So I'm going to press and hold my Shift key and start playing with my gizmo with W and R again, just to create something a bit more simple. There we go, this is enough. So I'm going to right click and cap the top part. Alright, and I'm actually going to press F4 to show all of my curves. Right now I can't select the geometry because my border is still selected, so I have to press 3 again, or press this selection, and I'm just going to drag this over here. Now we can use chamfer instead of the Swift loop. So if I just grab the edges by pressing number 2, and what if I want to select the whole ring of edges on this geometry here? Instead of going one by one like so, I want to select all this ring of edges. I will just have to double click on one of them. So double click, and automatically you can see that I've selected all of the edges here. Now I can also use chamfer. So if I right click and I have this chamfer option, I can also access the chamfer by going to the edit edges down here. So I prefer to right click, it's way faster. So let's hit this settings and let's put this chamfer option over here. And now if I play around with this, I can also start creating this additional protectors that are going to be holding the TurboSmooth modifier. This is the distance or the offset, and also the number of iterations that will produce in this edge, like so. Now for the moment, let's just keep it at 1. You can reset the values again with the right click. So I'm just adding some extra depth here, but it's not really necessary. So I'm going to right click, and now I'm just gonna hit the OK. Now let's put in some TurboSmooth here on top of this one. Okay, you can see that only the part in which we used the chamfer is maintaining its geometry, but the whole other edges have been collapsed. This is also a nice product, so we can just start by increasing the iterations like this. So if I press F4, we can see the difference, and we can see how powerful TurboSmooth is. Now, one thing about the edges when we're working with architectural visualization is that all of the edges have to be smoothened out. So if I grab the icon here and the box, the edges, if I just press F4 again in the clay mode, are very, very sharp. And this usually doesn't happen in real life. All of the edges that we see in tables or edges in the walls, all of them have a certain amount of smoothen edges on them. So we can either use the chamfer for this, and remember that if we go to the modifier list, we can look for the chamfer. But before that, actually, let me just convert this to an edit poly. And it's not necessary to grab each edge one by one like this. It's not necessary to do that in this case. So you can see that I have smoothened out this edge here. However, I can go back and just use a chamfer modifier, which will grab all of the edges in this geometry. We can control this just like in the modifier that we've used before. So we have the amount, okay, so we can increase this, and also we can increase the segments like this. Now make sure down here that the chamfer is not affecting the whole geometry. It's a good time to notice this, that this geometry is actually producing some type of shadows here, and these are not very good because they're also going to be appearing when we are rendering just as shadows. But I don't want this chamfer modifier to be affecting my whole geometry. I only want the edges to be smoothened out. So for this, I'm going to go down here. You can see that smooth entire object is on. So I'm going to click here and select smooth chamfers only. This way, only my edges will be chamfered. Now, modifiers are not only present for editable polys, but they're also present for splines. Now, for this exercise, let's go to a different viewport. Use the front viewport. Let's go inside by Alt and W. Now, let's pick the line. And I'm going to also create some kind of base or some kind of glass here. And we've seen this line before. So remember that if we just click and drag, we can start making some kind of shapes here. Maybe I'll start creating a plant pot for now. A simple plant pot like so. And I'm just going to draw the silhouette from one of its side. Once I'm done, I'm going to right click. Okay, so now you can see that I have the silhouette maybe of a plant pot or something similar to it. I'm going to right click because this is done now. I'm going to go to my modify and I'm going to collapse all of these. And inside interpolation, let's also change these steps to 100. And now I'm going to use a lathe modifier to complete my plant pot. Let's go Alt plus W to see this geometry in the perspective mode, Alt plus W. And I'm going to go inside the lathe and inside axis because this just looks really funny. Let's go inside the axis. I can also control it with my gizmo. So I'm just going to drag it out like this. So I'm going to just hide this. Okay, so this is my silhouette. And actually my axis is in the wrong way. So let's go back and change this to over here. So let's hide this. And the axis has to be at the same level as my silhouette here. Okay, so there it is. Let's actually make it a little bit more bigger there. Alright, so what it has done is actually has extruded this line in a 360 way, using this mid-axis as the transform center, as their pivot, basically. And also you can check out this extrusion in degrees, but if I just reduce this to, let's say 80, it's only going to extrude this till 80 degrees. But let's keep it at 360 by typing in 360 here. And the number of segments, so if I press F4, you can see how many segments this has, but I want to smoothen this up a little bit more. So if I go ahead and double this to 32 maybe, not too much because of the polygon count, remember that. And now I want to give it a thickness. So just to give it a thickness really easy, we usually use the shell modifier. So the shell modifier will give some thickness to our surfaces. So we have the outer amount here at 1 centimeter. Let's change it to let's change it to 3 centimeters. Okay, now I can also increase the inner amount if I want to. Okay, or the outer amount. It's up to you. So in this case, the outer amount is controlling the inner one. So let's go for the outer one, which is in this case the inner. So let's add the 3 centimeters. That's a bit too much. Let's just leave it at 2 centimeters. Okay. Now I can also bevel the edges if I want, but it's better if we use a TurboSmooth modifier for this. Now let's see how it acts once I apply it. So TurboSmooth. And there we go. It's a nice round base now. Now if I go back to my line, I can still keep editing this. So if I open my line options, I can see that I have my vertex here. So I'm just going to grab these two and I'm going to pull them all the way up here. Now let's apply the TurboSmooth again, and I've altered this once more. So let's go to, again, the vertex. So now if I select these two, you can see that I have additional options here in these vertices. And these control actually the smoothing angle for each one of these vertex. If I choose these two and right click, I can see that they're both at the bezier. So if I turn this to corner, for instance, it's going to turn it into a polyline. Again, if I right click and go to bezier corner, I'm going to have some kind of mix between a smooth curve or a polyline, basically. So I'm going to right click and check this to smooth. So now my whole two vertices are very smooth now. So let's go back to TurboSmooth, right? And you can see that once again, I've manipulated this geometry by going back to my line. So this is the way that you can stack these modifiers here in 3ds Max. I can still stack them, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select this and make a duplicate of this object by holding my shift and moving it with my X axis. Let's see what instance does for now. Let's select instance and click OK. So if I go back to this one and let's say that I've modified it, you can see that both of them are practically linked to each other. That is happening because I've selected the instance option. So if I go back and let's just delete this guy and I just duplicate it again, I'm only going to copy it this time and I'm going to hit OK. Going to back to this one, back to my line, and right now you can see that they're both acting as a different object. If I wanted to collapse all of these options into just one editable poly, I would just right click, convert to editable poly. So now these geometries will have the options of a normal editable poly, but I can no longer change them as I have been doing. So you can see that this is just an editable poly with the usual options, okay? So if I grab these vertices and I go to a front view by using this little cube at the right side, I'll just select all of these guys. Okay, so I've totally changed this geometry, but this guy is not an editable poly, so I can go back to my line and edit it however I want it. Okay everyone, so that's it for this lecture. We are going to be looking at more edit polys in the future as we need to work with them always. So don't worry if you don't get the hang of it right now, we have plenty of time for that. See you in the next one.